Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Rising. Soccer is out this week, but we still have an amazing show for you today. We have Rachel Bovard in the house. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you. Good to be with you guys.
Absolutely. All right, so here's who we have. We've got Zed Jelani on to talk about corporate wokeness and what that is distracting from. We also have Ken Klippenstein on. He's got some new breaking news exclusives about what's been going on in Portland and other cities with those DHS agents. But we wanted to start with the economic picture and give you all an update, the latest on the negotiations in terms of any sort of coronavirus economic relief. So you'll recall that Friday is the day that those unemployment benefits officially expired. Something around 30 million Americans have been depending on those benefits. Senate then left town. There were some negotiations that happened over the weekend, but Mark Meadows saying on Sunday it doesn't look like they're anywhere close to a deal. Let's take a listen.
I want to start with the state of discussions on that aid package. Yesterday, Senator Schumer, the Democratic leader, said it was the best discussions we've had so far. Would you put it that way?
Well, I would characterize it that way, but we still have a long ways to go. I can tell you that we've spent the last 3 days, actually last 4 days, trying to get to some kind of consensus, at least to start negotiating. Yesterday was a step in the right direction. Our staffs are actually working today. We'll be meeting again tomorrow. But I'm not optimistic that there will be a solution in the very near term. And that's why I think the effort that Senator Martha McSally led on the Senate floor to extend the enhanced unemployment was the right move. And yet Senator Schumer and his Democrat colleagues blocked that.
So Chief of Staff Mark Meadows there saying he is not optimistic that there will be a deal in the very near term. And just again, everyone knew this date was coming. They set the date, right? It's not like this was a surprise. And yet here we are. The benefits have lapsed. Even if a miracle occurred and they were able to pass something today, you would still have several weeks go by before this kicked back in. And what they consider progress is apparently the fact that they had a conversation. They didn't come any closer, it appears, to making any kind of a deal.
Yeah, it's really shocking, I think. But to your point, this is what we see from Congress so often. They set their own deadlines and then are just blown away with surprise when they show up.
Right.
And, you know, they force everyone to deal with the consequences. But I think what frustrates me is that this is a reflection of what it is when you take every other elected official out of it and you just negotiate these massive deals with like 4 people. Right. You need to get the rest of the membership involved. And to me, I come at this from having worked 10 years on Capitol Hill and seen kind of the ins and outs of how the sausage is made. This is when you start voting. You put it on the floor and you force people to be accountable to what they're doing, because nothing speeds up a negotiation like the transparency that comes with being on the record. So I think the vote on UI last week was good, but it's not nearly enough. They need to put all of these proposals on the floor and flesh out where the friction points are. Because right now it's just Mitch McConnell, Chuck Schumer, President Trump, and Mark Meadows talking to themselves. And that's not helpful. Well,
and here's the thing. The polling shows basically if you took 535 random Americans and put them in a room, they would do a better job right now than these people are doing. I mean, it does not appear to me that they've agreed on a single thing. If you ask the American people, overwhelmingly, they're like, yes, we are in the middle of a pandemic. Give people help. Extend the unemployment benefits, figure it out, get aid to state and local governments, get stimulus checks in the hands of the American people. This is not complicated if you are an average person looking at this, and yet somehow it's incredibly complicated. They can't figure it out. They can't agree. They're like hamstrung by their donors' demands and their own ideological headspace, I think is in some ways the biggest problem here. And that was really evidenced by Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin this weekend on the Sunday shows as well, still pushing this idea that the biggest problem with the economy is that people got too lazy, too fat and lazy on their unemployment benefits. Let's take a listen to that.
We want to fix the issue where in some cases people are overpaid, and we want to make sure there's the right incentives. But again, let me just emphasize, we put on the table a proposal. Let's extend it for 1 week at the same rate while we negotiate so we don't hurt the American public.
So you do think it is a disincentive to find a job if you have that extra $600?
There's no question in certain cases where we're paying people more to work, stay home than to work. That's created issues in the entire economy. But let me just say, you have to look at all these things.
I want to interrupt you there for just one second. It's not all the evidence. A Yale study from this month refutes that, saying many economists who have studied the benefits said that so far they don't see any evidence in labor market data that the payments are affecting the rate at which people are returning to work during the pandemic.
Well, let me just say I went to Yale. I agree on
that.
certain things. I don't always agree. There's a Chicago study that goes through all the people that are overpaid.
I don't know what the worst part. The part when he's like, I went to Yale, might be the worst part of that whole clip.
If your first response to someone refuting your point is, I went to Yale.
I went to Yale. So, but I mean, here's the thing. Look, I want to be fair. In normal times, if you were giving people more money to stay at home, then yeah, they probably have an incentive to stay home. That is not the problem that we're facing right now. There's another study that shows there are 5 job applicants for every job. There are not enough jobs. People cannot reopen. They cannot spend money. They've lost their jobs. They're trying to hold on to their housing. Like, the fact that the thing that they're so obsessed about is that some cohort of working class people would get a little bit more money, and they just can't abide that. Meanwhile, you know, they're throwing out billions for the FBI building. They're throwing billions at the Department of Defense. The Democrats have their own wish list as well. And so that this is the sticking point that working class people might actually have the blow more than cushion for themselves, to me tells you everything about the priorities in this town.
Well, I think that that's exactly it. It especially when you have all of these other priorities getting funded. To your point, the FBI building being top line for the White House.
Right.
Right. But yet you can't, you know, you don't want to spend too much money giving the working class Americans the support that they need. Where I am sympathetic to the Republican argument is that I think there's a number of ways to get at it. Right. Unemployment is one way, but stimulus checks are another. And I'm wondering if that's not a more efficient way to do it, not necessarily the one-time check.
Fine with that.
Right, but like getting it out the door in a reasonable fashion. But we're not seeing the real negotiation.
Right.
We're seeing what they leak out, we're seeing what they say in the spin room, but we're not actually seeing what's on the table. And again, it goes back to this point. You need to get these people on the record. You need to start forcing this debate into the open.
Right, I think that's absolutely right. And look, we've said here from the beginning, I would have preferred a response from the beginning that was not geared around forcing people onto the unemployment rolls.
Right.
I mean, that's the other piece that you can never lose sight. It's not that people wanted to go on unemployment. This is the policy you set up. You set up a policy that basically incentivized everybody to cut the jobs, put people on the unemployment rolls with the promise that, okay, we're going to make sure you're taken care of through this process because we have this system set up and we know how to do it, rather than doing what a lot of other developed countries did, which was to nationalize payrolls. They're not even talking, like, if they wanted to talk about that, that would be fine. If they wanted to say, hey, instead of doing the $600 plus up, why don't we do recurring stimulus checks so that you have some stability, so you know you're going to be able to make your rent payment next month. None of that is being offered on the table. Instead, and I just saw just minutes ago, Jeff Stein, Washington Post reporter, has been all over this stuff, tweeting that it's looking more and more possible that Congress doesn't actually pass anything, and the White House basically figures out what they can do on their own. He and one of his colleagues at the Washington Post had a piece up this morning saying that unilateral action is looking more likely from the White House, that they would figure out what they can do just basically through executive orders. To that point, Stephen Moore, sort of libertarian Heritage Foundation type of economist, is out with a Wall Street Journal op-ed laying out the mechanism by which the president could just cut the payroll tax, which again, look, if you want to cut the payroll tax within some other okay, whatever. But the problem is not the problem is people who aren't on a payroll.
Right.
And this does nothing to that, but it just shows you, and Trump also tweeted, like, let's have payroll tax cut. Back to that. We thought we had gotten past this, that they had given up, and now we're back to the payroll tax cuts. It just shows you we're sort of like back to the drawing board, and they seem really ready to almost throw up their hands at the whole thing.
Yeah, my issue with the payroll tax, to your point, is it's a rich person's solution to a poor person's problem, right? And it's not actually getting at the issue, which is the unemployment. People who are not employed.
Right.
Right. At best, the best thing you can say about it is it reduces like fixed costs for employers. Maybe you're incentivizing a few more people to hire some folks, but that's it. And it's not just, you know, the Republicans, I think, that are flailing at trying to use this excuse to create these wedge issues. Right, on payroll tax. But we have, I think, a story from Chuck Schumer trying to reduce the SALT cap.
Yeah.
Right? And then if we can throw that up on the
straight to their core constituency of like affluent suburbanites.
Right. And again, this is the exact same problem with the payroll tax. This is a rich person's solution to a poor person's problem. This is the SALT cap. Removing that is not going to benefit anyone but upper income earners. This is not necessarily the time to do it. Again, all of these things can be debated by themselves. You know, they may have merit in different issues, but the issue we're trying to solve right now is unemployment and people standing in food lines. Neither of these proposals get to that.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And the utter lack of urgency, the fact that they let this deadline come and go, that you have millions of people who are, you know, potentially 30 to 40 million people facing homelessness, quarter of the population, according to the Census Bureau, in housing insecurity, meaning they struggled to make their payment last month or don't expect to be able to make it this month coming up. And there was some new reporting about, you know, people who've got no money in their bank accounts. They've been able to hold on barely through this time, through the unemployment benefits and other programs that have been offered. And now they are on the brink. They are facing utter financial ruin. And they're not even sure at this point, the White House and Congress aren't even sure at this point that they are going to do anything, that they're going to pass anything. So unfortunately, that is the state of play this morning. I wish I had better news for you. And of course, we will keep you updated as developments transpire here on the Hill. And I'm going to tell you what's on my radar. That's next.